I've eaten a lot of raccoon.
Yes.
Yes. The answer is yes. And I've eaten it hunting. I've actually had it served by my mom at the table away from hunting. And I have eaten raccoon. And yes, it's not uncommon at all. I'll tell you something that was one of my favorites is squirrel. And it's wonderful, and my mother could do a great job of it. And we all had our favorite pieces, and my dad and sister, I have one sibling, a sister, and they would fight over, not fight, but my mom and I, it was just my sister and I as for a sibling. My mom and I wouldn't even ask for the brain in a squirrel.
Oh, man.
And delicious, seriously.
My dad loves cow
My
brain.
sister always got it, or my dad.
A fight over the brain.
A fight over the brain. Well, good morning, good people. Mark Holmes here with my buddy Cowboy Joe Boo, as well as Joe Bear in the house. And as always, I want to say thank you all for watching, commenting, subscribing, and being part of the Joe Boo Sports Report. Without you guys, as well as you ladies, you know that this literally does not work. So let's get open for business here, and let's wake up the football gods. Appreciate everybody who comes in, supports the channel. We got a new feature now, actually, on the live streams here. Right now, it's not available to everybody, but it is literally a scoreboard for how much you guys interact. And it was great last night because it was almost like we're having a game inside the live stream. So definitely check that out as we go ahead and do stuff. I'm going to be leaving here this morning. I'm still working on this kitchen from hell, installing some more of the kitchen cabinets, and I got to cut the countertop and come back and work on that stuff. But that's not your problem. You know, I am a jack of all trades, a master of none, but it's better than just a master of one. Because when you need to talk about the Cowboys, when you need a hot water heater chase, when you need some custom cabinets, you got it all right here. Right here, one-stop shop. And with that, you know, it's funny because people say to me that I'm an idiot. I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm just terrible. But I know one thing. I had sitting here in 2018 Demario Davis as a free agent from the New York Jets, and I said, damn, Cowboys, this is the guy to sign. And here we are in 2025. That guy has not missed a single game. Been multiple Pro Bowler, has about 100+ tackles every year and about 5 or 6 sacks. I was right about that one. And I believe I was right about Calais Campbell. I think I was right about Dak Prescott, although the Dak haters will probably say, oh, it's your fault that we got that guy. Yeah, it's my fault, as opposed to Connor Cook or Paxton Lynch. But be that as it may. I was sitting there saying, watching DeMarvion Overshown, okay? Overshown, who tore his ACL, his PCL, and his MCL. Complete knee rebuilding. And I've got some experience with knee operations and knee issues, okay? I had a flesh-eating bacteria in one knee where I've had 3 surgeries to save my life, and I've also had a meniscus surgery. On my other one, I don't have an ACL. I have not had one since I was 18 years old. God, what is that? 40 years. 41 years without an ACL in my knee, and that's why sometimes it pops out. That's why I got bone on bone and everything else. I do know a little bit about the knees. And we had seen, you know, Overshown, he's working out, no shirt on, and he's talking about being Agent Zero, finally getting his number and stuff. And they asked him about when he might be back. They said, do you think you'll be back for the Thanksgiving game against Kansas City? And he was kind of like, oh, yeah, sure. And I said in my mind, seeing him, because I've seen him on the field, right, without a knee brace. He's just got the sleeve on his leg, and he's doing backup drills. Okay, that's not playing in a game. It's not playing in a game, right? However, I kept looking at him, and I said he's ahead of schedule. Because I pointed out I remember when RG3, and I've got a picture of Joe Boo up looking at RG3 from training camp, okay? And he was the all-in to start the season. And I remember seeing him with a knee brace on in practice with a hitch in his step. And I looked and I was like, I don't think he's going to be ready. Now, he did start the season, but his leg really wasn't ready. And I believe he was out there too soon. I also pointed out seeing Chase Young 2 years ago when I was there with my buddy, and seeing him, and they were talking about how long before he'd be ready, seeing a major hitch in his step, and it was about 3 months later that he was back on the field. Not exactly the same guy as he was before, but then again, I don't think he was ever the same guy after his rookie year. Be that as it may, I looked at it from the standpoint of what I've seen with Overshown, and I say he's further along than both of those guys. And so I said, here we are. You got all of June, July, August, September, and you're talking about the end of November. That's 5 months. I was like, 5 months. 5 months is a long time for where he is now. And I'm not saying he's going to be ready next week. I didn't say that. But I said, look for him sooner than November. It wouldn't surprise me, I said, if he would be there like in October or something like that. Right? That's what I said. But Mark Holmes, he's just a freaking idiot. He knows nothing. Okay? All right. I get down here this morning. So I'm getting ready, got the truck loaded and get ready to leave on out of here as soon as I'm done this video. And I see Sports Day Cowboys tweeted out a story, Dallas Morning News. Dallas Cowboys linebacker DeMarvion Overshown ahead of schedule in rehab from knee injury. Overshown said his goal was to return for Thanksgiving game against Kansas City November 27th. This is an article by Calvin Watkins. DeMarvion Overshown said he's ahead of schedule on his rehab and serious knee injury where surgeons require 3 ligaments in his right knee. The second consecutive year that he spent time in the offseason doing rehab work, but as usual, the Cowboys linebacker, a third-round pick from Texas, is optimistic about his return. I can do anything, everything and anything right now. Okay, so they're kind of saying, yeah, he's kind of way ahead of schedule. But I'm sitting here thinking, he's going to be back before 5 months. He's going to be back before 5 months. Just looking at that. If you're telling me he's got 4 months, he's able to move the way he's moving, because when you have the hitch, that means your knee is still really, really tight. You're getting used to the new ligaments and things on there. He's got the flexibility. Now he has to get the trust and the strength back in the legs. And with the trainers that you have now, with the amount of work and recovery and things they're going to do between, using the ice therapy, the ice whirlpools and the heat whirlpools back and forth, doing the stretching exercises and the strengthening and everything else. 5 months is a long time. And I can guarantee you he will be back sooner than later. But, that's me. And if he is, it will go down as one of the greatest knee recoveries in history. Because we look at Adrian Peterson, who came back in a year, less than a year, with an ACL. But now you're talking about a guy who tore everything in his knee. MCL, ACL, PCL, and started all over. Even if he only comes back in November, it's still miraculous and one of the most incredible recoveries ever. All right, so I want to revisit something because 3 weeks ago, we got George Pickens. It seems like he's been here longer than that. The question was, how will George Pickens fit with the Cowboys? Or even will he fit with the Cowboys? I'm doing this because there's not a lot going on right now. Okay, we're at OTA practice and stuff. We got more next week. And then we have mandatory minicamp. But the way George Pickens seems to be fitting in every aspect is just unbelievable. But let's revisit what they said.
Now back to a guy that Kyle played twice a year. George Pickens spoke about being traded to the Cowboys. This just came in moments ago.
I'm grateful to be here, and I'm grateful to play with Dak. As far as, roles and stuff like that, I'm just here to work. Whatever role finds me best is where I'm going to find myself. And I feel like growth for me is taking a great direction and me coming to the Cowboys. I'm kind of where my feet are right now, to be honest. I'm not really thinking about contract talks. I'm just glad to be here at Cowboys right now and, trying to build a winning culture.
All right, Adam, what are the Cowboys hoping for with Pickens in Dallas?
Well, how many times did we hear about the Dallas Cowboys potentially pursuing a wide receiver this offseason? How many times did Field Yates give them a wide receiver in the draft, whether it was Tedero or McMillan or some other player that could come in and complement C.D. Lamb? And ultimately, Dallas waited until after the draft to trade essentially a 3rd and 6th round pick to Pittsburgh to get one of the most talented wide receivers in the league. Talent, of course, is not the question. There are other issues and questions, and he will have to overcome in Dallas, George Pickens will, a history of other Steelers wide receivers being traded and producing less in their new home. It's a long list.
Here they are, McCrispy strips, long, tender, juicy chicken made for dipping.
Do I have this? Oh, shit.
Or double dipping, but why
Sorry,
stop
guys.
there?
Sorry.
Keep going.
Creamy chili.
New McCrispy strips now at
I've got the wrong.
Of wide receivers, Antonio Brown, Mike Wallace, Antonio Holmes, Juju Smith-Schuster, Deontay Johnson, Martavis Bryant, Chase Claypool.
YouTube freaking ads.
Few wide receivers have been moved away from Pittsburgh and gone on to shine elsewhere. Emmanuel Sanders one of the only exceptions. And now it's up to George Pickens to try to do something that many other wide receivers could not. He's 24. He's going to have a great opportunity to do
He's
it.
going to have
He's
a
got
great
a lot on the
opportunity.
line in the last year of his contract, but it's going to be up to him this season.
It's an interesting list, Adam, for sure. And look, I mean, no one doubts the talent of George Pickens, right? He'll join C.D. Lamb to form what could be one of the better wide receiver duos in the league. Both wideouts went over 2,000 receiving yards in the last 2 seasons. They're one of 2 sets of current teammates who each had at least 2,000 yards since 2023, along with Puka Nacua, Devontae Adams on the Rams. So really good company there. Nina, how do you see Pickens fitting in this offense for the Cowboys?
Seamlessly. I mean, I like it for a lot of the same reasons I liked the possibility of Tedero McMillan going to the Cowboys. And
Okay, so we're going to revisit
big-bodied
how she feels
contested catch
in
guy,
just a second.
explosive downfield, pairs really well with C.D. Lamb, who of course has the versatility, to play in the slot and outside, so you can hunt matchups. And the quarterback, Dak Prescott, who's aggressive throwing downfield when he sees one-on-ones. I also think having both Pickens and Lamb will help the run game, which has struggled in recent years. They're going to face a lot of those too high shell coverages, more room underneath. They've invested in the offensive line. They drafted a back. So I think we're going to see a more balanced offense as a result.
Yeah, Cal, you heard what Pickens said about Dallas. You've been traded before. How does a player go about entering a new locker room, trying to ingratiate himself with everybody else already in there?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing is gaining the trust of your players and your teammates. George Pickens, great, phenomenal talent.
I think he's got that right now.
Do the, hey, how you doing? You know, are you doing good today? You know, build the trust of your teammates. Get a relationship with that quarterback.
3 weeks in, he's got that.
He said Dak Prescott.
Okay, check that out.
So that's key. But he really has to do that in practice. One thing that I did when I got traded was gain the trust with my play. I didn't go in and talk and do all that. I tried to gain the trust of my teammates. I did that in practice. The first day, thanks Jimmy G, I picked him off, and that was kind of the start of my trust with the teammates and the coaches. So George Pickens, please gain the trust of your teammates.
He's got that down pat, wouldn't you say, guys?
Just make plays.
So can
Just
the
make
Cowboys
plays.
trade for Jimmy G from the Rams, late round pick, just to get the George Pickens confidence sky high. So on paper, we talked about this now. So the cost was moderate in terms of the draft compensation, right? Essentially a 3rd and a 5th next year. On top of that, George Pickens
a lot better than a first-round pick.
$4 million next season for a guy who's already got a 1,000-yard season on his ledger. That is basically pennies in NFL wide receiver money. On top of that, Mina talks about the fit. It's a quarterback who's unafraid to be aggressive. He'll be the number 2. He'll take pressure off of C.D. Lamb. All of these things seem great, right? It reminds us, though, that this is a straightforward trade. This trade will be as good as George Pickens wants and allows it to be. George Pickens has a chance to prove that he can be accountable. He can be a reliable teammate every single day, that he can control his emotions on the field. If those weren't question marks, major question marks, I would say, he wouldn't have been available in the first place. The Steelers wouldn't have traded a 2nd-round pick to the Seahawks and then paid DK Metcalf $150 million. On paper, there's so much to like about this trade. And for
So
a guy
much to like.
who's going into the final year of his rookie contract with this huge pot on the proverbial other side of the rainbow available, Kyle, this is a massive, massive opportunity for him to make good on what seems like a tailor-made fit.
Yeah, I mean, Jahan Dodson was traded last year from the Redskins to the Eagles for a third-round pick. I think the Cowboys are getting great value in a third-round pick.
There you go.
But more importantly, let's say he does ball out and they don't want to pay him. The Cowboys get a comp pick when he gets paid by another team, and I think that's really, really good value as well.
Okay, if the great...
All right, so, again, this may be the defining trade for the Dallas Cowboys. Now, here's what here's this morning. Of course, you know, we got the haters. Mia Coombs is still loving this.
I'm really optimistic about this Cowboys offense. I love what these two receivers not only do for each other in terms of, you know, taking advantage of the attention that is given to each of them individually, but also what they do for the offense as a whole. So last year, Hannah, CeeDee Lamb, when he was faced single high coverage, was 4th league-wide in yards per game. George Pickens was 8th. If I know that, defensive coordinators know that, which means they're not going to leave their quarterbacks on an island against these two, which means the Cowboys offense will be running into more favorable looks on the ground. I think they're going to face a lot of too high. And if that offense, if the run game can be more efficient, whoever becomes the lead back, whether it's Jaden Blue or Javonte Williams, then this suddenly, to me, becomes one of the more efficient and explosive offenses in the NFL. So I really like how it all plays together.
Classic good news, bad news situation here for this trade. The good news is George Pickens is going to make the Cowboys a lot better. The bad news is you were the 3rd best team in the NFC East before this trade, and you're still the 3rd best team in the NFC East.
Okay, ass. You know what? We'll see what happens. All I know is things are crazy in the NFC East. Nobody has repeated. Nobody has. And if we go on what happened last year, well, the 49ers the year before were starting the season coming off of the Super Bowl and ended up being one of the worst teams in their division. I believe they drafted before us because they were ass. And mind you, all of you 49er fans that praise how great Brock Purdy is, it's funny how he wasn't quite the same guy when he didn't have Christian McCaffrey. Yeah, but he even still had a much better running game than the Cowboys. Interesting. Maybe weapons matter. Already good people, as always, I got to get out of here. I got to get to work. So I will see you guys real soon. I hope everybody has a great day, and hopefully I can get this work done sooner than later and get back here and do some more work in the workshop.
Can't stand it anymore. I've got to get out of here. Calm down. Get a hold of yourself.
Stewardess, please let me handle this.
I've got to get out.
Calm down. Now get back to your seat. I'll take care of this. Calm down. Calm down. Get a hold of yourself.
Doctor, you're wanted on the phone. Everything's going to be all right. Please.
Sister, please, I'll handle this.